Welcome back. You are watching the press preview, a first look at what's on the front pages as they arrive. It's time to see what's making the headlines with former Conservative Special Advisor Anita Boateng and editor of The Courier, David Clegg. They'll be with us from now until just before midnight. So let's see what's on some of those front pages for you now. Immigration is the top story in The Times, reporting that hotels housing asylum seekers are set to be hit with a wave of protests this weekend. The Metro also leads with the government's record on immigration, focusing on the rise in asylum claims. The Daily Mail also focusing on that story, its headline, all-time high for asylum claims. The headline in the Eye, Starmer faces growing unrest over record asylum claims. And the Express calls it Labour's day of shame on migrant figures. The Sun focuses on Lucy Connolly, who's been released from prison after she was jailed for inciting hatred online in the wake of the Southport attacks. Telegraph leads with upcoming industrial action from Tube staff, GPs, nurses and resident doctors, calling it an autumn of discontent. 83% of Gaza war dead are civilians, the headline on the front of The Guardian. The Financial Times leads with the government's plans to take over Specialty Steels UK, part of Liberty Steel, after it was put into compulsory liquidation. And the Daily Star's front page carries a warning from Geoffrey Hinton, the godfather of artificial intelligence, that AI will eventually dominate humans. We're joined tonight by former Conservative Special Advisor Anita Boateng and editor of The Courier, David Clegg. Welcome to you both. We shall be discussing that a little later on. But let's start with the front page of the Eye newspaper and their headline, Starmer faces growing unrest over record asylum claims. The figures that came out showing a record number of asylum applications in the year that Labour came into power in the past 12 months.
That's right. The figures out today reveal 111,000 asylum claims during Labour's first year in office. I think actually it's a mixed picture as far as how the Labour government will feel about it. It could have been worse, but I think we are in quite a dangerous moment around this at the minute. We've seen protests at asylum hotels across the country. We're expecting more of them on Saturday. It's an issue that we've been reporting on at my newspaper, The Courier, because Perth is one of the cities that has seen protests. We've been covering that quite extensively, and there is real frustration amongst the council there about some of the misinformation and disinformation that there's been about the numbers there, about the environment in which this debate is being conducted, and concerns that things that aren't actually correct are being promoted online, stoked up by various actors, and that this could cause problems. And for the example of Perth, which I know the most about, this is a situation where asylum seekers have been in these hotels for a number of years already without issue, and it's only that this is when this issue has begun to come up nationally, that it's led to certain tensions, and that the council have had to put out a couple of statements, basically myth busting what's been going on there. So what the stories in the papers tomorrow will be about these new figures, and what they show is that there is it's clearly a continuing problem with the number of people coming in with small boats, and that is causing a real strain on the infrastructure across the country of how to deal with this, both from a policy perspective, from a financial perspective, and from a political perspective. And I think, though, what my reflection on that would be that what we're seeing playing out then across the country is that the attempts to deal with this, to deal with what this will actually mean on the ground, as we have a rather toxic information climate happening here, that the response to this and the political necessity and imperative that Keir Starmer and the UK government get to grips with this issue and begin to not only ease the logjam in the system, take the international steps that are required to bring down the numbers of people trying to make the trip on the boat, but also have proper methods in place to process speedily and in an efficient and acceptable way those who are then going through the system.
Anita, do you believe that the parameters within which this is being discussed, that they are toxic, as David is suggesting?
I think that ultimately, if your strategy relies on people not noticing that you have asylum hotels in your local area, it's probably not a very good one. Because I think that residents in lots of different towns and cities across the country, and I'm from nearby Epping, feel like often you have people come in these circumstances where they literally don't have anything to do because they can't work, they have no way of entertaining themselves, and often that you do have a situation where you have possibly 100, possibly more, possibly fewer, but in your town centre of kind of typically young men kind of just hanging around. And as a former local councillor, I can tell you, people don't like people hanging around. It kind of doesn't matter where they are and where they're from. So it does impact the dynamic, particularly in a small town. But I think what we're getting to is, it's almost, for me, this is going to become a confidence in the government issue, because whether or not you can end up rehousing the 100 or so migrants in one particular area, or whether or not this entire system of having asylum hotels falls like dominoes, you still get to the point of the lack of public consent for the approach, i.e. the number of people coming over on small boats. And that is the issue that the government is not going to get to grips with, and therefore can't get out from under the series of crises that will emanate from what's happening right now.
David, we turn to the Metro. 111,000 record asylum seekers. See the Prime Minister there with the strap line securing our borders, the promises of stopping the boats, smashing the gangs, and couldn't be further away from his goal.
Clearly, it's a very difficult issue for him, and I don't disagree with anything Anita said, but I think what she's describing is a symptom of the problem. You know, we have asylum seekers, and for example, in the Perth issue, they're at one of the hotels they're in is just across the road from the train station, so everyone's going to notice. There was no keeping it secret, and it is blatantly not the right place to be housing asylum seekers. The problem is that the system has got to a stage where that is where they have had to put them. And it's not a cheap way to do it as well. I think some of the statistics that are in the reports today are, I think the hotels are housing around a third of asylum seekers, but accounting for 3/4 of the cost of doing so. So it's a really expensive way to do it. It is clearly a way that is going to increase the likelihood of community tensions if you have people in a visible area where you're shutting down hotels and as Anita says, there's the large number of people hanging around because they're not free to work, they haven't got nothing else to do, they're given a bare minimum of money and have just got to survive it. So that is undoubtedly not is a very suboptimal situation. The issue is, though, from the political perspective here, is what does Keir Starmer do about it, and how can that be resolved? Now, it was a Labour manifesto pledge to close all the hotels, I think, by 2029.
Yeah.
I think it's pretty clear that the events of the last week have shown that he's going to have to accelerate that timetable, or he's going to face real difficulties. Some of these things are within his control, and frankly, some of them are not in his control either. You know, they've got what the global international, global political situation and how many people are going to try to come. He's in negotiations with France and Germany to try and change their domestic policies and how they handle it to see if that can slow it down. And then he's got to work out how he houses the ones within the law that come. But he inherited a big problem, and I was never a believer that the Rwanda scheme was going to work under the last government. And in fact, what we have seen in the stats today is that what has been sped up is some of the processing of getting people through the system, because the numbers are record, as the Metro front page suggests today. But actually it hasn't seen a corresponding increase in the number going through the system because they've been processing them quicker.
But also there's some discrepancy because the Metro, they're saying a 7% fall in the number of those arriving being deported, but the Independent's saying a 25% rise in the number of deportations. So how it's all being framed?
I would need to frisk the figures, and I'm not in a position to be the adjudicator between the Metro and the Independent this evening. But my understanding of it, from having read across the various papers, is that they seem to be doing the initial handling. They seem to have been sped up that processing. They are now worried that the appeal courts are going to be a logjam in the year ahead, because more people who are refused on first instance are appealing, and that could cause problems down the road, I think.
Let's try and get to some other stories. We've moved to the FT. Palestinians flee as Netanyahu prepares to approve this fresh Gaza offensive, all the while still saying that, he wants to bring the war to an end. Anita?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is becoming more and more devastating by the day. If we look at the situation in Gaza City, never mind the issue of the number of people that have been displaced in and out of Gaza City, many of whom have been struggling with lack of food. And now we're in a situation where Netanyahu has signalled that he is going to give final approval for this, massive takeover, which Gillian, have been talking about and has been, running on Sky today. And, there is talk of how do we encourage evacuations. I think there are complexities to that because of the number of people displaced, because of issues around starvation, because of issues around money, and because we're talking about people potentially walking, 30 or so kilometres. So I'm surprised, actually, it's not captured more attention, more political attention on the front pages, because this new attempt to remove Hamas from Gaza City could have serious repercussions. And we keep coming back to the question of who is going to run Gaza if this is the Israeli government's intent. So things are looking increasingly grim in Gaza City again.
David, you've got about 20 seconds.
It certainly is looking grim. Two things that I could add is, one, there's another report in the Telegraph, I believe, that there's going to officially be declared a famine in Gaza tomorrow, which I think is only the fourth officially declared famine since the agency which does that was set up 20 years ago. And we've also seen the Israeli ambassador called someone by the Foreign Office in London tonight about this West Bank settlement plan, which is going to continue to be another issue causing international tensions around this. And I am pretty sceptical about Netanyahu's desire for a peace deal on the terms that have been outlined thus far.
OK, David and Anita, we'll leave it there for the moment. Going to take a break. Coming up, we'll be looking at how the newspapers are covering our use of AI. On the front page of The Times, the increasing reliance on chatbots leads to rise of what's called AI psychosis. Stay with us for more on that.
I'm James Matthews, and I'm Sky's US correspondent, based here in Washington, D.C. Do you fear a fourth indictment? Does your government owe an apology to the British home children?
Great to see you.
Does your government owe them an apology? The fact that they were intercepted, does that indicate a military weakness on the part of Iran?
No.
Free, wherever you get your news. There's no doubting the strength of this hurricane as it roars through. You can feel a devastating power. It had been a difficult night in a deadly storm.
Bang, bang. You can hear it hitting the windows.
Our houses are okay.
It's depressing.
As bad as all of this is, it could have been much worse. Today, this land they call sacred is at the heart of America's electric car revolution.
To me, it's a sacred ground.
The white gold rush is a race that Biden doesn't want to lose. I've covered some of the biggest stories in the world. Donald Trump, 45th President of the United States, it would appear is about to learn his fate.
Escort coming out!
San Quentin houses America's largest death row. They rarely allow cameras onto the condemned block.
James Matthews, Sky News. I want to be treated equally like everyone else.
It's one step closer to getting out, to getting off death row.
Sky News. Get the full story first. Mr. Trump, James Matthews from Sky News.
Hey, James.
You're diminished by claims that you're a racist.
Question?
Mr. Musk, has your ignorance and ego cost Ukrainian lives? Vladimir Putin calls you outstanding. What do you call him, sir?
He's from Sky News. He's from Sky News. He's entitled to ask me questions.
There's always more to the news than a headline. We want to discover, to delve a little deeper, to find out what's really going on. Explanation, analysis, the people at the heart of every story. I'm Neil Patterson, and this is the Sky News Daily Podcast. So, by the end, we'll hopefully all understand what's going on in the world just that little better. Available wherever you get your podcasts.
Our app gives you the very best of Sky News wherever you are. Breaking news, videos, analysis, up at 6%. Podcasts, watching us live.
Joins us live.
All in one place, and all at just the touch of a screen. The Sky News app. Get the full story first.
I'm David Blevins, and I'm Sky's senior Ireland correspondent. I've spent 30 years reporting the journey from conflict to peace. The end of the political stalemate, the start of a new chapter for Northern Ireland. Catholics and Protestants now facing the same threat.
If we both contract COVID-19, religion's nothing.
Sky News, the full story first.
Welcome back. You are watching the press preview. Still with me, former Conservative Special Advisor Anita Boateng and editor of The Courier, David Clegg. So let us take you through some of those papers. We're going to have a look at The Telegraph in this section, kicking off with this story about the Britain facing an autumn of discontent. The RMT announced yesterday that commuters will endure a week of industrial action on the London Underground at the start of next month. These strikes look set to be followed by months of walkouts across the public sector. GPs, resident doctors and nurses may strike as well. Anita.
Yes, I mean, what a way to be back to school first week. I know when we talk about strikes and people around the country kind of slightly roll their eyes because it is a tube strike affecting Londoners, but nevertheless, I think it will not just be about strikes on the Underground, it will be about GPs, resident doctors, formerly junior doctors and potentially nurses too. So we could get this period and sense that Britain isn't working. And I think that will be a huge and considerable political problem coming into a budget where the fiscal situation is incredibly tight. And the government has already shown that it's not really capable of delivering any meaningful cuts to spending. And so you have Wes Streeting, quoted here in The Telegraph, saying that ministers have a responsibility to stand up to public sector pay demands and to kind of support the Prime Minister and Chancellor. And I wonder if that is increasingly the tone that will be adopted by some certain senior cabinet ministers, because you may recall that last year, Louise Haigh, then the Transport Secretary, okayed a kind of significant increase in spending for in public sector pay for RMT, the union that is in charge of trains, and they still went on strike. And now they're asking for more, and they're rejecting a 3.4% offer, even though inflation is at 3.4%. So it's looking increasingly difficult, and the government is discovering that actually having a red rosette doesn't mean that the unions necessarily play ball.
Just very quickly, I mean, Wes Streeting has struck a quite bellicose tone, hasn't he, particularly with the resident doctors, and the fact that he gave in to them initially when they first came into power, and now it's kind of come back to bite him.
Well, I think that's been the lesson of the first year for the Labour Party, and it will be interesting to see how they proceed from the conclusions that they've drawn from the last 12 months, because it is the case that they gave pretty generous pay settlements to a whole range of sectors, and then they couldn't get the cuts in other areas that they required through their backbench MPs either. So there's an issue that needs to be squared there, which is if you're handing out more money, you need to raise it from somewhere. So we'll see how they tackle that.
Just going to jump in because we're running out of time. We want to get to this AI story in the Daily Star, but also another angle on the front of the Times. But take us into the Daily Star, Anita, first of all. I mean, bot no chance.
Yes, I mean, we've got bot no chance on both fronts. Number one, the godfather of AI, Geoffrey Hinton, thinks that robots will dominate humans, and it's no wonder because people are increasingly, according to the Times, forming attachments to AI. And this actually, I've seen it on social media, on Reddit, and all sorts of people thinking that AI is in love with them. They have romantic relationships, that think that they have incredible powers, that they've unlocked a different level of AI that's giving them is a real person or is sentient in some way. It's worrying because it's a sign of our times where loneliness, parasocial relationships, unhealthy attachments to social media.
Indeed, and they are calling it AI psychosis. We must leave it there just because of time, but thank you both. See you in the next hour. Let's take a look at the weather for you.
Breathtaking views with clear skies ahead. The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Well, the mostly dry weather will continue and it'll turn warmer for the bank holiday weekend, but it looks more changeable next week. Most places will have a dry and cloudy start tomorrow, but there'll be some clearer spots where it'll be quite chilly. Early cloud across Britain will thin and break through the morning to give a bit more brightness than recently. Just the odd shower is possible. Meanwhile, Ireland and Northern Ireland will stay rather grey with some drizzly rain, mainly in the west. It'll be a little warmer overall and less windy in the east.